Awesome. Yes, so I would like to invite now our speaker for today. So our speaker comes from the UK, from the United Kingdom. He is a master in pastoral theology. He is a father of 8 children, and he is the assistant to the national president of Family Federation in the UK. So yes, he's Matthew Huish, and we can all welcome him with a round of applause.
Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen with you. So it's my privilege today to speak with you on this topic, the human fall. Last night, if you attended the lecture, you would have been invited to consider the incredible design that was authored by our Heavenly Parent to allow us to experience abundant joy and blessing in our lives. That if we resemble God, our Heavenly Parent, and embody God's holy divinity within ourselves and our relationships with the people and the world around us, then we can experience incredible joy, incredible abundance. But our painful reality is that we are so far away from that in many ways. I don't need to present examples of the pain and suffering which is taking place in our world. I'm sure that you can use your own imagination based on the news reports that you have been paying attention to this week, perhaps, or some of the stories that you may be familiar with. This week, I have on multiple occasions felt heartbroken by stories that I heard, stories that I don't want to hear. I don't want to read these stories because I cannot believe how it is possible for a human being to behave so badly towards another human being, or towards a group of human beings, or to the world around them. It truly is tragic, the state of humanity. But there's a danger that I want to warn us about. There's a danger in looking out there and seeing how terrible the world out there is. Because if we only focus on that, we may miss another heartbreaking reality, which is that if we were honest with ourselves and if we truly examined our own heart, we would probably find that the line that divides good and evil in the world isn't just out there in the rest of the world, but that line goes right down me as well. And maybe we experience that in different ways. Hopefully there is more good in us than there is evil. And that is a powerful word. Many people don't like using the word evil because it has such a power to it. But if I were to be truthfully honest with myself and with you right now, I would admit that there is evil in me. I don't want there to be evil in me. But if I'm honest with myself, I have to admit it is there. And this evening, or later today rather, we will hear some content about how it's possible to eradicate the evil within and to recover the ideal of being holy people who resemble our Heavenly Parent. But what I want to focus on right now is this lecture, the human fall. One way of looking at our human condition is to see ourselves in a fallen condition, that humanity was supposed to be up here and now we're down here. We have fallen from grace. We have fallen from where we're meant to be. And so I want to ask the question, why are we like that? Why does evil cloud our hearts? How did it get there? And how does it remain there? I'm going to begin with the very simple conclusion that the root of sin is the misuse of sexual love. There we go. The root of sin is the misuse of sexual love in particular. How can I make such a bold statement? I have been paying attention to a lot of sociological research, academic research, which indicates that a lot of the trauma that is experienced in a generation is passed on to the next generation in a real and powerful way. And where does most of the trauma come from in every generation? It's in the family unit. It's in the most intimate personal relationships between parents and children, brothers and sisters, husband and wife. If there is some trauma in those relationships, it affects the quality of the love that we experience. It affects the quality of our character. And especially if the trauma is significant and severe, it has lasting consequences throughout the generations. Manon introduced me to you earlier by saying that I have a master's in pastoral theology, but my bachelor studies was in biochemistry. And for me, it is fascinating to explore how our DNA is affected by our habits. You may be familiar with epigenetics, DNA methylation. Genes can be turned on and off by the environment, by how we respond to the environment. And those genetic changes are heritable. Whatever we experience in our life right now, when we have children, our children will inherit that genetic information. So our stories echo through the generations. If I consider what my ancestors were like in my own lineage, then I am sure that there is a mixture of good and evil, which finds itself in the present day within me. My paternal grandparents divorced. My father was very traumatized by that experience. My paternal grandfather was a philanderer. He misbehaved in the area of sexuality, and he deeply hurt not only his ex-wife, but he deeply hurt my own father. And this is a trauma that I have somehow inherited, which I somehow need to absolve. And not only do I need to heal myself from inheriting that trauma from my father and his parents' traumatic divorce, but I also have to admit that my grandfather's tendency to misbehave in the area of sexual love wasn't just his problem, but it's my problem as well. And even if I haven't made any significant mistakes in this area, I have to admit that I have the capability of making mistakes in this area. And so it is something that I need to pay very close attention to within myself, especially, but also in my community. That's why historically, most cultures, especially most religious cultures, imposed so many rules in the area of sexual love, because communities recognized that if you misbehave in this arena particularly, it has lasting consequences, not only in the family, but in the rest of human society. And to help understand this idea that the root of sin is the misuse of sexual love, I want to reflect on a religious story that many of you will be familiar with. This is the story of the human fall. And I want to learn some lessons from this tragic story. So what is the story of the human fall? In the Judeo-Christian tradition, the Abrahamic tradition, we have a story in which there is a Garden of Eden, in which God has placed the first man and the first woman. In this garden, there is a tree of life, and there is also a tree of knowledge of good and evil. God has given clear instructions to Adam and Eve that they may eat any of the fruits in the garden, but they may not eat the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. A serpent then appears in this story, who asks the woman the question, did God not say that if you eat this fruit, you would surely die, even if you touch it? And the woman responds, well, God did say that if we eat this fruit, we would die, and if we touch it, we would die. And the serpent says, you will not die, you will become like God. Your eyes will be opened, and you will become like God. So she receives the fruit from the serpent, and then she feels ashamed. Previously, she was naked and unashamed. Now, she is ashamed of her nakedness. And she then turns to her rightful husband, Adam. She offers him some fruit, and he also eats, and he also becomes ashamed. They cover themselves with leaves. They hide from God. And as God is walking through the garden in the evening, God calls out, Adam, where are you? And Adam says, I'm hiding because I'm afraid of you. Why are you afraid? What have you done? And then Adam says, that woman over there that you made, she made me eat the fruit. And then God asked the woman, what have you done? And the woman said, that serpent that you made, he made me eat the fruit. And then at the end of the story, everybody is cursed, and Adam and Eve are banished from the garden. So there are many layers to this story, which we don't have the time to go into right now. But the key lesson that I want to take from the story is understanding what the fruit in this story symbolizes. What does this fruit represent? We don't experience sin in the world, and we don't experience trauma echoing generation after generation because somebody ate something that God told them not to eat. That is not the problem. The problem was that this fruit represents sexual love. If you can imagine that the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, these two trees at the center of the garden, what did they represent? They represented the ideal of perfect manhood and perfect womanhood that the first human beings were supposed to become. If they were to inherit God's divine qualities in themselves and create a couple and a marriage and a family in which God's true love could settle and grow, then the fruits of those trees would be beautiful and sweet. Their children would be amazing, nurtured in the true love of God. But if that fruit is eaten at the wrong time and with the wrong motivation, then the children born from that relationship will be traumatized. So the tree of the knowledge of good and evil represents Eve. It represents Eve's sexual love. And the serpent tempted her to engage in the misuse of sexual love prematurely. She was too young. She was not ready. God told her, don't do that. You can do anything else, but don't do that, because that's the most dangerous thing you could do, to misuse sexual love before you are ready. In a state of maturity, when we have inherited the true love of God as individuals, then sexual love is something holy. It becomes something beautiful. And we know how to express sexual love in a safe, healthy, and wholesome way. But in a state of immaturity, Eve was not ready. And the serpent, who in the religious tradition we understand represents the angel, the archangel, who is called Lucifer or Satan. This character tempted Eve into a premature sexual relationship. We see this happening in society all the time around us, where men, especially older men, in positions of authority and power, abuse their positions, especially positions of trust, to groom young girls into a relationship with them and then abuse them. This is a painful tragedy which repeats itself again and again, where a man who is not supposed to be not supposed to be the husband of that woman, takes that position when he's supposed to be in a position to protect and serve. He is not the father and he is not the husband. So he should be in a position to protect and to serve, but he abuses that position to take advantage of the young girl and grooms her into an exclusive romantic relationship with himself. How does she feel after that abuse? She feels disgusted with herself. She feels used and abused, especially if the abuser then dumps the girl and moves on to a new victim, as is so often the case. Perhaps the young girl was looking for validation. She was looking for value. She was looking for a father figure, perhaps, or a male figure who would love her, protect her, and serve her. And instead, she was betrayed by him. How heartbroken would she feel as a result? And we see this again many times in society, that women who have been hurt as a result of a failed relationship, not always, but sometimes, they then look for the rebound guy. They look for another man who can fill the hole in their heart that was created by that failed relationship. And so Eve, she went to Adam, who was supposed to be her husband, but they were too young. They were not yet ready to engage in sexual love. Adam, who also received the commandment not to eat, he should have remained obedient to that commandment, but he also gave in to their temptation. And so his sexual love was awakened prematurely. And now we have a situation where the first event of sexual intimacy in the first human ancestors was a painful experience, a tragic experience of trauma and regret. So can you imagine what kind of family they created? Already in the end of the story, we see that Adam is blaming Eve and Eve is blaming another man. How many times do we want to blame other people for the problems in our lives? That's a common human habit. We don't want to take responsibility for our mistakes. We blame others. And so you can imagine the first human family was a dysfunctional family, a family in which there was constant argument and disagreement and blaming one another. Can you imagine what the children of that family experienced when they were growing up, and who they would become when they became adults themselves? We know that story. It's the story of Cain and Abel, which is the story of murder. The first murder in the human story happened within that first family. So we can see how the misuse of sexual love leads to all of the other problems in society. And that's why it's so important that we protect this most holy institution. And so before we take a break, something I want to invite you to consider is how important it is to protect sexual love, how important it is to safeguard our hearts. Yeah. We need to safeguard our hearts with faithful chastity. What was it that Adam and Eve did not do in this story? They were not faithful to the word of God that was given to them. Of course, the word of God manifests itself in many different ways. In religious traditions, we have holy scriptures. And so if we study the holy scriptures, believing that these scriptures contain truth that can help us in our lives, then if we are faithful to these scriptures, trusting them and trying to live according to them, we will be protected. But it's not just in the religious scriptures that we find truth. We find truth also in our traditions and in our cultures. In society today, if you say that you believe in traditional family and traditional marriage, you may be opening yourself up to persecution and attack. How can you be so backward thinking? You should be more contemporary and modern. Don't you realize that traditional marriage is an outdated thing? It's trapping people. But that's a very cynical and dangerous way of thinking. We should, of course, we should not be locked into a dogmatic or a fanatical approach to our lives. Of course, we should constantly be searching and questioning and doubting so that we can then understand more clearly. But to reject our traditions, which have been established over many thousands of years, would be very foolish and arrogant. I think we should show some appreciation and humility to our ancestors who cultivated so many traditions and institutions over time, which are there to protect us. Why do we reserve sexuality only within marriage? It's because of the power of sexuality, which has the power to create life, which has the power to propagate a lineage of descendants who will look to me as their ancestor, and I will have to be accountable to them. Have you ever considered 5 generations into the future, 10 generations into the future? What kind of stories will your descendants be telling about you? Maybe nobody will remember me. Maybe my life will be so insignificant and unimportant that my story will not be told. That would be sad. Maybe I live a life which is so tragic and painful that my story will be told as a warning to my descendants. Don't live like Matthew did. I hope that's not the case either. That's even worse. But I hope that my life will be a story worth telling to my descendants. And even if there's no story to tell, I hope that the vibration of energy I create in my marriage with my wife and in the family that we raise together, that energy will echo through the generations in a way that it will support them. It will uplift them. It will protect them. So that is why chastity is so important. We recognize the power of sexual love, and it needs to be protected. Now, of course, within the context of secure, sacred marriage, our heavenly parent wants us to enjoy a dynamic and creative sexual life. Our love lives should be powerful testimonies to our love for our heavenly parent and our mutual love between husband and wife. I think God would be inspired to see couples competing with one another, to see how much sexual intimacy they can nurture between the husband and the wife. But it doesn't happen by accident. It must be intentional. I have to make a decision that I want to be the best lover possible for my wife, to bring her joy and also return joy to my heavenly parent. That together we can create a couple in which our sexual love creates abundant joy, but also strong security. If my wife and I are powerfully connected in love, that creates security for our children. I could be tempted to go into a biochemistry lesson about the different hormones that exist in our body to fortify that relationship of love. There's adrenaline, there's obviously testosterone and estrogen, but there's also oxytocin and vasopressin. All of these hormones are a cocktail of tools given to us by our creator, our heavenly parent, so that if we use them properly, they bind a husband and wife together powerfully, so that we may then enjoy incredible sexual love within the security of marriage. But those tools can be misused as well. Those same hormones, if we are sexually intimate with people recklessly, then those same hormones will in fact poison us and torture us. So we have to be very respectful about this. Our heavenly parent gave a commandment to the first human ancestors because God knew how powerful love is. The truth is not more powerful than love. People would readily give up their lives for love. And so in order to protect ourselves from false love, which will push us in the wrong direction, the truth wasn't good enough. And so our heavenly parent had to ask us to trust God. Please trust my word. Believe in this commandment that I've given to you and obey. Listen to me carefully and please take responsibility for being chaste. Even if you don't understand why, you'll understand later. Maybe as children, we heard our parents say that many times and we never understood. But then we became parents ourselves. And suddenly we hear ourselves saying those words because we recognize how true that idea is. So I think now would be a good moment to take a short break. And afterwards, I will continue this lecture.
Yes, thank you very much, Matthew. It was very great. Yes, now we will take a short break of 7 minutes. So take the time to reflect about what's been heard now, or if you need to go to the bathroom, or even if you need to maybe write down some questions, write down some notes so that later you can send them to question and comments, so that later we can have some questions for the Q&A with Matthew. So see you in 7 minutes. All right, welcome back, everyone. I hope everyone's slowly coming back from the break. Yes, so we're gonna start now with our second part. So get your drinks ready, get your seat all ready so you're comfortable. And yes, let's welcome again Matthew for the second part.
Thank you so much. Let's just continue where we left off. I was talking about safeguarding our hearts, and I want you to think about where you want that safeguard to be. Do you want it to be very close to harming your heart, or do you want that safeguard to be as far away as possible? If you think about a cliff where somebody could fall off and hurt themselves, you don't put the barrier right next to the edge of the cliff. It would be so easy just to go over that barrier and then immediately fall down. But we might want to put the safeguard further in, so that even if one crosses that safeguard, one is still some distance from the cliff from which one could fall and hurt oneself. It's scary, it's terrifying how small bad habits can very quickly escalate to become big bad habits. And so in terms of safeguarding our hearts, I want you to think about this. What can you do to protect yourself from being tempted by all kinds of sins, but in particular, the sexual sin, which is so powerful and dangerous. What kind of music do you listen to? What kind of TV shows do you watch? What kind of topics do you talk about with your friends? And if those topics are not very wholesome, are those the right kind of friends that you should be spending time with? These are difficult questions to ask, but I want to ask them because I think by participating in this workshop this weekend, we're not just exploring some interesting ideas, but we're also trying to think, well, how can I live my life? If I want to live my life respecting the power and sanctity of sexual love, what kind of safeguards do I need to put in my life to protect myself so that in the future, if I'm young and single, I can build a beautiful marriage and family? Or maybe I am already in a marriage and I am already in a family. Well, what can I do in order to beautify the relationship that I have with my husband and wife and make it even better than what it already is? And to eliminate all possibility of unwanted temptations. Maybe that means only using social media at certain times of the day. Maybe no mobile phones in the bedroom, or things like that. You have to decide what you need to do to protect your heart. But moving on, I want to think about what happens when we are taken over by corruption. What has happened to humanity as a result of the human fall? Generation after generation is hurting because of the trauma that started in the first human family because of the misuse of sexual love, but then it has multiplied into all the different kinds of sin and suffering that we experience. Murder, theft, injustice, betrayal. All of these things happen. And what it shows to me is that humanity is living under a shadow. There is a shadow hovering above us, haunting us, influencing us, and most of the time, we're not even aware of it. Our human condition is that we are possessed by these shadows. These shadows have a big influence in our lives. They even control us. In the Christian tradition in particular, the scriptures talk about powers and principalities, that there are evil spiritual forces that influence us. And the ultimate authority of those spiritual powers is Satan. We give him a name. We create this personality, Lucifer, the devil, the one who is in control of all that is evil, like a military commander giving instructions to soldiers. Go and attack this person. Go and attack that person. Look for their weakness and try to hook them where they are vulnerable. So all of us have these hooks in us. These are the shadows in our hearts. And it's very easy to ignore those shadows because they are in the dark. We don't recognize them. But when we shine the light of truth on our souls and on our hearts, we discover that the human condition is not just the rest of the world's problem, but it's my problem too. And in fact, deep in me, these shadows are real. They're scary. They are terrifying. I don't want to admit to the shadows that lie in my heart. I don't want to admit to the crazy thoughts and feelings that fly through my mind and through my heart when I don't want them to, but they are there. So what do I do about that? Well, perhaps that's something for us to discuss later in the group discussion, and also something for us to consider in the lecture later. But I want us to acknowledge that these shadows have a powerful control over our lives, that there are evil spiritual forces that want to influence us and attack us. What are these hooks that these spiritual powers can latch onto, with which they can pull us from one side to another? These hooks are the sins that have been committed, either by myself or by those around me. If I have made mistakes in my life, those small mistakes, as I said earlier, can grow into bad habits, which grow in their strength and power. Those are my responsibility, my sins. I have to admit and take responsibility for my individual sins and to purify myself. That might mean I have to change some behaviors, maybe go in a completely opposite direction. And sometimes the straight path is that way, and I'm going to this side. And in order to correct it, I have to go even further to the other side just to correct myself. That may be necessary. But that's at the individual level. We don't just have sins at the individual level. We also have collective sins. Now, of course, group sin is a very dangerous idea if it's misused. And there are many societies that have punished people unfairly because of guilt by association. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the reality that because of the fact that I'm a man representing all men, all women will fear me perhaps, or some women may fear me just because they have been hurt by men. Then it's my responsibility to treat women with dignity and courtesy and respect, even though I didn't hurt that woman. But it's a collective sin for which I have to take responsibility to help liberate all women who have been abused. I am a white European, and maybe I was not responsible for the Holocaust. I was not responsible for the transatlantic slave trade, but there are people who have been hurt by that. And I have to take responsibility for healing those people and liberating those people. That is a collective sin. And it's very easy for me to justify myself and say, well, I didn't hurt that woman. Why should I, as a man, be blamed for all the trauma that women have experienced? I didn't enslave people. I didn't kill Jews during the Holocaust. Why must I be blamed for other people's suffering? Well, that's not my responsibility. My responsibility is to show love and compassion and not allow the evil spiritual forces to drag me in a direction of counter resentment. Yeah, I could become very misogynistic as a man and hate women because they hate men because they've been mistreated. But that's not the right response. We have to stop and end the cycle of victim blaming and instead say, I will take responsibility for healing myself, and I will do whatever I can to help the other person also be healed. Also, we have ancestral sin, the sin that has come down to us through our ancestors, most of which is so far in the past, it's deeply in the shadows, where it can never be known what kind of sins were committed. There is no record of it. And yet somehow the sins of the past have influenced how I think, how I feel, how I behave. As I said earlier, these behaviors can affect our DNA, which is something we inherit. And so at the very molecular level, we are influenced by the past. Those, again, are some of the hooks through which evil spiritual forces will want to pull us. We have certain tendencies, certain characteristics, many of which can be good if nurtured in a holy direction. But if they are corrupted, then they become very damaging. And the most important sin of all is the original sin, the original trauma of the first human ancestors. And I said it earlier, the root of sin is the misuse of sexual love. That is the most deeply rooted problem that we human beings face. It's so difficult to uproot this problem. And yet that is the root of sin, out of which all the other sins have come. And I believe later today we will explore how this original sin can be removed. But what are these hooks? I want to explore this idea of these hooks a little bit more. These hooks by which these spiritual forces can latch on to our sins and pull us in different directions. According to the unificationist teachings, the teachings of Father Moon and Mother Moon, as a result of the fall, we have inherited what we call fallen nature, which is a part of ourselves which is working together with our original nature. Our original nature is something given to us by God, but it was corrupted. And so we now also have a fallen nature which competes with that original nature. Do you sometimes find yourself doing things that you don't want to do? It's because this fallen nature inside of us pulls us to do the wrong things, even though we know it's the wrong thing to do. And yet we do the wrong things because we give in to that fallen nature. Well, let's understand this fallen nature. According to the teachings of Father and Mother Moon, our fallen nature has four primary characteristics. The first of which is not loving from God's standpoint. Love, like everything else in the universe, obeys certain laws. God has designed this universe to work beautifully and in harmony as long as those basic fundamental laws are obeyed. And love is no different. Love follows rules. And when we break those rules, instead of practicing false love, instead of practicing true love, we practice false love. And there are negative consequences. So we need to love in the way that God intended. We need to receive God's love as our heavenly parents' children and recognize our divine value. And that's the first way in which we may not love from God's standpoint. We don't receive God's love. We don't see ourselves in the way that God sees us. We allow ourselves to be convinced by the lies that maybe we have no value, we have no influence, we are worthless. No, in fact, we have divine value, unique value, cosmic value, and God wants to bless us and love us abundantly. But God also wants us to love others according to the laws of love. And so I must love my family members and love my brothers and sisters of the global human family. I also have to love. When we return to the human fall story, the biblical story of the Garden of Eden, it was the responsibility of the angel who was created to be in a position to serve and protect Adam and Eve. It was his position to love Adam and Eve as God loved them, to recognize them as God's children. The angel was not the child of God. The angel was created as a servant of God. But the angel should have recognized that Adam and Eve are created as the children of God, and he should have loved them accordingly. But he didn't. Instead, he wants to possess that love for himself. He felt that God made a mistake. He felt that he wanted more love. And so he was going to take that love by rebelling against God. It's like a servant who is responsible for managing an estate, who does not inherit the estate when the master dies. Instead, the child of the master inherits the estate. But maybe the manager feels that they deserve to run the estate because they are the one who's good at it, and because they had a close relationship with the master, and they recognize that this young son perhaps doesn't have the quality to be able to run the estate properly. But that's the wrong way of thinking. It's not recognizing the correct order of love. And so in the story, the angel Lucifer tempted Eve out of her relationship with God, out of her identity as a daughter of God, and into a relationship with him. So now she is characterized by her relationship with him instead. So that was the first characteristic of fallen nature, not loving from God's standpoint. And the next one was to then leave your proper position. The archangel was supposed to serve, supposed to love, but he abandoned that responsibility and did something differently. What did the archangel do? Instead of being in a position to serve and to be the channel for God's love, and also to receive God's love through Adam and Eve, that's also something that he was supposed to do, to receive not only the love of God, but also the love of the children who would appreciate him and elevate him even higher. But he turned his back on that and instead placed himself at the top. I'm now in charge. I know better than God. You should do what I say. That's what the serpent said to Eve. Did God really say that? Actually, God wants you to open your, if you eat the fruit, your eyes will be opened and you will know just like God knows, which is, there's some truth in that, but it's a half truth, which is very tempting. And the result was not wisdom, but foolishness and ignorance, which then led to suffering. So the third characteristic of the fallen nature is reversing the order of love, reversing the dominion. And then finally, what did Eve do after being influenced? Did she repent? Did she turn to God asking for help? No. She hid and went to Adam, and she got him to also make the mistake, which means that the evil was multiplied. The fourth characteristic of fallen nature is the multiplication of sin. So we have this habit of not just failing to take responsibility for our own sin, but also to convince others to do the same. What kind of bad habits do you have, which maybe you don't feel so bad about because, hey, everybody's doing it? But if I were honest with myself, I would recognize, actually, I don't want to have this bad habit. If I could change my life, I would get rid of this. But it's hard because I know that everybody else is doing it. And it's very tempting. But it means we don't just have to swim against the tide of our own life, but we have to swim against the tide of the whole world. It means that we need to be countercultural. And we may lose friends by doing that. We may become unpopular. People might question, what are you doing? Why is there this change in your life? And you would have to justify yourself in a way that you never thought you would have to. But because your choices about how you want to live your life may upset others, they will then influence you to try to live like they are living. And so evil multiplies. It's a tragic reality. Now, do we have to give in to the temptations that come from around us? Should we just should we give in to our fallen nature and say, well, that's the way we are. I have this fallen nature now. There's nothing I can do about it. If we follow some kind of deterministic philosophical position, well, I'm built this way. I can't help it. Well, the teachings of the unification movement say that we do have a say. We can make a choice. We have freedom. And so what I want to ask is, what is true freedom? And I think it means creating the life I want. We are the authors of our own lives. Someone else might be writing part of the script. Yeah, we cannot choose whether we were born a man or a woman. We cannot choose where we grow up in our childhood. We cannot choose who our family members are. We can't choose our parents or our siblings. There are many things that we have no control over. And so there's something to be said for the fact that in many ways we are not free. we cannot control the environment. But there is something over which we are free. We are free to control ourselves. And I can choose how I respond to the environment. Unfortunately, most people who sexually abuse children were themselves sexually abused as children. The abused becomes the abuser. But does that mean all children who were sexually abused when they were young, do they all become abusers when they grow up? No, of course not. In fact, the vast majority of people who were abused as children do not go on to abuse others when they grow up. They may have a lot of trauma that needs to be healed, and their lives may be negatively impacted as a result of that pain, but they don't necessarily repeat the mistake. And this indicates to me that there are no excuses. However traumatizing and painful our history might have been, especially the elements of which over which we had no control, I do have control over how I respond. Now, my feelings may be very strong, and they may pull me and push me. Like I said earlier, there are forces which are trying to push us, and there is sin within us and fallen nature which also wants to express itself. But ultimately, I can choose. I don't have to give in to those temptations. I don't have to get angry and be violent. I don't have to give in to the temptations that are around me. I can choose the life I want to live. And so if we want to live with true freedom, there are a few things that we need to accept. First of all, that true freedom operates within the rules of the universe, the principles by which our heavenly parent created this world. If we want to be truly free, we cannot neglect to respect those laws. We have to, in fact, respect those principles and live according to them. In fact, when we try to break those laws, many times we then lose our freedom. Today in the world, people want to be sexually free. But in my experience, the greatest sexual freedom takes place when we control sexuality within love, within marriage. It's within marriage that the most beautiful sexual creativity can take place. That is where there is true freedom. And licentiousness and sexual freedom outside of marriage creates so many tragic problems. More than half of the 16-year-olds living in the United Kingdom today do not live with both of their biological parents. And there is a lot of data that shows that the optimal environment for children growing up is to live with both mummy and daddy. We save a lot of money by protecting family and marriage. We lower crime rates. We increase levels of happiness. We increase levels of sexual satisfaction as well by, in a sense, losing our freedom to gain freedom. As a young person growing up, I did not have sexual partners. I remained chaste. And so you could argue during that time, I was not free. But then I got married, and then I was free. And I could experience true freedom because it was within the context of the principle. But also, true freedom requires us to take responsibility. We can't not take responsibility for the consequences. True freedom takes responsibility for what happens next. And actually, that's very liberating. It means that even if I make mistakes, I can fix them. I can admit that I've made a mistake and I can fix it. This is what repentance and forgiveness is all about. True freedom means that it is possible to be set free from a mistake. The worst thing to consider is that you will never be set free from a mistake that was made. If you can imagine, there are some parts of the world where people are forever stuck in a class group that is at the bottom of society, and they can't move upwards because their ancestors made some mistake. Maybe after a revolution takes place, and all the landowners are punished for abusing the workers, and so the families of those landowners are forever punished. That's not fair. There's no true freedom in that. There's true freedom when we take responsibility. So we need to operate within the principle, we need responsibility, and also true freedom needs results. Our lives are supposed to return joy to God, our heavenly parent. And we can only do that when we create joyful results. So true freedom has to make something, has to build something. It has to, so in terms of creating the life I want, well, who do I want to be? That can be one result of my freedom, that I become the person that my heavenly parent wants me to be. What kind of family do I want? And I take responsibility within the context of the principle to create a family that can bring joy to God. What kind of world do I want to create? True freedom means that I am free to build the world that I want. And that, I believe, is incredibly liberating. The final thought that I want to conclude on as we wrap up this lecture is relating to the heart of our heavenly parent right now, but also when the first human ancestors fell. At the end of the story, I told you how God was walking through the garden in the evening, asking his children, "Where are you?" Can you imagine how God felt when that happened? In calling for them, God was inviting them back. God was calling to Adam and Eve to return home. Whatever you've done, we can work this out together. I believe in you. I believe we can fix this. I don't think all is lost. And so God wanted them to come back. You could argue, why didn't God stop them from falling in the first place? But again, I've just been talking about true freedom. And true freedom means that we have to take responsibility. And our heavenly parent gave that responsibility to us as a gift. Because when we accept that responsibility and become the co-creators of our lives, then we earn the authority to be rulers over the whole creation. God created Adam and Eve and the human family to be different from the rest of the creation. The rest of the creation simply follows the principle without needing to take any responsibility. But God gave us a unique portion of responsibility because God believes that we can be just like our heavenly parent. Why does God trust us? Because we can be just like him. We can be just like our heavenly parent. And so, even though we are stuck in this fallen state where it feels like things will never get better, we're always going to have this sin and fallen nature pulling us the wrong way. Human beings are always going to be horrible to one another. Actually, no. Our heavenly parent believes that things can get better and they will get better. In fact, if we are honest with ourselves, as heartbreaking as the world is right now, it's so much better than what it was even just 100 years ago. And if we reflect on the history of humanity over thousands of years, right now, we're at such an exciting time in the history. I feel really hopeful. I try to imagine what our heavenly parent feels right now. I think God feels so excited about this time right now because we are sharing this incredible truth with one another. We are shining a light on the reality of the world and the reality of our own heart. And when we take responsibility for what we see, we can fix all of these problems. And we can begin to take steps towards recovering who we truly are. God does not interfere in that because God believes that we can do it by ourselves. A parent who always catches their child when they fall over never allow their child to learn how to walk. Sometimes the parent has to let the child go and fall over sometimes so that the child eventually learns how to walk. I believe that our Heavenly Parent is at a very exciting stage as a parent, looking at us, the children, seeing as we grow in maturity and become just like our Heavenly Parent. So let's accept that responsibility with gratitude and with excitement that this fallen condition, the more we understand it, the more we can take responsibility for fixing it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Let's give a round of applause. That was really great. That was really something I think each of us need to hear, because this is basically the reality now of our everyday life. We can see all of this that's been happening, occurring in our life. And I think it's very important that we understand kind of how this kind of happened and try to understand kind of the root of it all. Yeah, thank you very much again. And now we will have our Q&A session. So we will now be asking questions, Matthew. So we have here a first question, which is, does it mean that before the fall there was no good and evil?
Right. I think the answer to that question, quite simply, is yes, there was no good and evil before the fall. Of course, the potential for good and evil was there. If we look in the biblical story of the Garden of Eden, the tree is called the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. If things were done properly, then the tree would give fruit to goodness, and then we would know goodness. But if the fruit that was born out of false love created false fruit, evil fruit, then we would know evil and suffering. So there was a choice there. And so before that choice was made, the potential to go either way was there. But our first human ancestors needed to make that decision. And before they made that decision, one could argue there was no evil. It gets complicated if we think about the serpent character. We have this angelic being who is supposed to be there to support and serve. And he tempted Eve, who in turn tempted Adam. Was he not evil? Well, my reflection on that would be God's commandment not to eat the fruit was not for him. He was an angel, part of the creation, different from human beings who were created as the children of God. It's a qualitatively different relationship. And so the angel had no responsibility to take. The responsibility belonged to Adam and Eve. And that was a risk our Heavenly Parent had to take. God entrusted the care of his infant children to his most trusted servant, and our Heavenly Parent was betrayed. But I don't believe that there was evil inherent within Lucifer himself, but that evil was born out of the result of Adam and Eve giving in to his temptation.
Yes, thank you. Then we have a second question. Why would some people, prefer not to agree with this understanding?
I can only speak for myself. I can't talk for other people, but in my own life of faith, I engage with truth by wrestling with it. I'm naturally very skeptical about everything. I like to question everything. When I was little, I was probably the child who always asked his parents, but why? but why? But why? And I think there is a place for that. It's important to question things. And in my experience, I ask these questions sincerely, not because I'm trying to tear down these stories and destroy them, but because I really want to understand what is going on here. Why do these stories exist? Why do we tell these stories the way that we tell them? And how is it relevant to my life? Now, I can speculate. Again, I don't want to speak for people, but I can speculate some of the reasons why they might not want to accept certain interpretations. Maybe it's because of their own experience of pain. Pain is a powerful emotion, and we don't want to experience pain. Yeah, if we're being tortured, we will do anything to stop the pain. And I'm not just talking about physical pain, I'm also talking about emotional pain. And as a result of the fall, we have the trauma deep in our heart, so that all of these sins, all of these fallen natures, they mean that very frequently we react out of our pain. We see the world through the lens of our pain. And so I think looking at these stories, there are some very uncomfortable, painful truths which are simply too painful to bear right now. And until some healing takes place, where we recognize our value as God's children, and we recognize that I have the power to take responsibility for healing myself and to heal others, then it's too painful for me to even go close to. And I think as someone who wants to share the truth with others, I have to be patient and compassionate to people who don't want to agree with this. I have to absorb their anger and respond with love. That's all I can do.
Yeah. Thank you, Matthew. Then we have another question, which is, thank you for your wonderful presentation. God knows everything and can make everything possible. But why didn't he stop Eve to fall?
Great question. I tried to answer this question right at the conclusion of this lecture. And maybe I didn't explain it effectively enough, but let me try again. Eve, as the child of God, was supposed to grow to become the image of God's divine femininity. I'm sure if you participated in the lecture last night, you would come to understand that human beings were created in the image of God, male and female. Within God, there is a divine masculinity and a divine femininity, and Eve was to become that divine femininity, the embodiment of God's divine womanhood, daughterhood, sisterhood, wifehood, and motherhood. And that was Eve's responsibility, to accept that destiny and to grow into those roles. God cannot take that responsibility away from Eve. If he were to do that, he would stop her from growing. He would take away her opportunity to become God's daughter. And if God wanted Eve to be qualified to be the, we see the Lord and the lady. So if God wanted Eve to be the lady of the world, the person who could be a true mother for all humanity, and the master's wife who would take responsibility for the whole creation, God wanted Eve to pass that test of taking responsibility for growing. It's as simple as that.
Yes, so we all have our responsibility. Yeah. So next question is, how do you restore or help people who got hurt?
Well, I think we may look at some of that in the next lecture. And indeed, if we study the principles of restoration more deeply, over time, we can draw out many useful tools and principles that we can apply to our lives to help others. But if I just try to answer this question very briefly, I would start by looking at myself and my own hurt. Jesus said, before you take the splinter out of someone else's eye, first remove the plank from your own eye. And so I think while we should show compassion and help and love for other people who are hurting, we need to be careful that we don't make things worse. Sometimes we make things worse with very good intentions, but our help can maybe hurt them even more. And so we need to also appreciate that I can't save people. Yeah, that's God's responsibility to save people. In my experience, what has saved me is God's divine love. And maybe I have received God's divine love through people. And I'm very grateful to the people around me who have shown me love and taught me the truth. But ultimately, what saved me was my living relationship with my heavenly parent. And so I shouldn't get in the way of that. I should respect that the person I love who is hurting, the only thing that can truly heal them and truly save them is a living, loving relationship with their heavenly parent. And at the horizontal level, I can show them love, which can maybe open the door to recover that vertical relationship of love with God. And so that's something I can do by first healing myself, and then using my testimony of healing to maybe show appropriate advice or guidance to those who may be hurt, and also admit that I don't know how to help people. Sometimes I don't know how to heal their pain, but I do know how to hug them, and I can hold their hand, and I can just sit next to them and be with them in their pain, and just help them know that they're allowed to be in pain, and I will love them unconditionally as much as I can. I try to, yeah.
Yes, love is always the key in this way. And now we have our last question, and it's how we can deal with collective sin of nationalism that leads to wars. Big one.
Yeah, huge. And I recognize that we are a very international group, and I will probably offend some people by what I say, and I will offend some people by not saying some things as well. So I'm just going to offend people by answering this question. So please forgive me from the outset. This word nationalism is a very difficult word, because I believe that there are virtuous aspects to nationalism, that there can be a love for one's nation, a desire to serve the people that you have kinship with. You share a common story, you share a common culture, you share a common language, or even a religion. Sometimes we share in common with one another. And loyalty is not a bad thing. To show love and loyalty and patriotism for one's nation. Nationalism is a very strong ideology amongst groups of people who are feeling oppressed, maybe by being within a greater nation. I live in the United Kingdom. We have Welsh nationalism, Scottish nationalism, Irish republicanism, and these are real issues that the English have to take responsibility for right now. I will be honest with you. I would prefer that the United Kingdom remained a union. I believe that our history, as painful as it has been, has something beautiful as well as something painful. And I want to celebrate what is good while trying to heal what went wrong as well. And I don't want to be ashamed of my English heritage either. I think it's important to show a certain love for one's nation. But the question here is, how can we deal with the collective sin of the kind of nationalism that has led to war? And all wars are painful because people always die. Someone, mothers lose their sons. Family members lose their fathers or their husbands. the young men, or not just men, but also women too. Innocent people die as well in war, and it's truly heartbreaking. How to heal that is incredibly hard, because the person has to want to be healed. And if I don't let go of my pain, and I don't want to let go of my pain either, because it justifies my resentment. It justifies my desire for revenge. I have an uncle. My uncle died during the Warsaw Uprising. My mother is Polish. She wasn't born yet, but her family was living in Warsaw during the time of the Nazi occupation. And during the Warsaw Uprising, my young uncle died. And that's my connection to the trauma of the Polish people, who have no group of people has a monopoly on suffering. All of us have some pain somewhere. And I think it's so important that I want to seek healing, and I can't find that healing if I don't allow myself to find it. And so if I'm in a place where I am possessed by the shadow of anger and resentment, and I want revenge, well, what can I do in order to help that person set themselves free from that desire for revenge? I shouldn't let them kill me. That's not an answer to the problem, because no amount of revenge will sate their desire for vengeance. It's a hunger that will never be satisfied. What I have to do is to obviously protect myself and protect those who I can protect, but at the same time serve and love and show that I can love the enemy and seek their forgiveness, and we can one day hopefully embrace and not give up on that hope. It's very hard, but I believe it's possible.
Yes. Thank you very much, Matthew, for giving your time now to also give us this presentation and answering these questions. I know time is very precious nowadays and these busy days. And yeah, thank you very much. We can maybe give again a round of applause to Matthew. Thank you so much. And yes, now we will move on to our next part of the event. So we will now have group discussions for 20 minutes. So we can share the questions. So basically, you can maybe introduce yourself, since we're international again. Introduce yourself and in the group discussions, where you come from, who you are, your name, and then you can discuss what can you do to safeguard your heart from unwanted influences. How aware are you of the attitudes that lead you in the wrong direction? And how do you think our Heavenly Parent feels to see sexual love, which is designed to be holy, as a root of suffering? So yeah, so we'll be 20 minutes in group discussions. So see you later in 20 minutes. Enjoy. So we're almost everyone, I think. Okay, now it should be all of us. Oh, okay, so coming back. All right. Welcome back. So thank you for joining now the group discussions. I hope you liked them. And I wanted to ask if maybe someone would have something to share, if there was something inspiring from the group discussion. You can maybe raise your hand, and then if you want to share. Yes, I see Joaquin Del Pozo. Oh, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Yeah, now? Okay. I want to share something that it comes when Matthew was speaking, because as we have I mean, we are all, in a way, we are all sinners. We have all these, like St. Paul said, we have this sting in our flesh. So sometimes we can fight against all the sin that is can be within us or around us, and the difficulties, because I mean, some people, they say we live in the last times. And I want to point something in the book of Revelation. I can read it. Is Revelation 22 in verse 10 and 11. It say, and he said to me, "Do not seal the words of the prophecy of this book, for the time is at hand. He who is unjust, let him be unjust still. He who is filthy, let him filthy still. He who is righteous, let him be righteous still. He who is holy, let him be holy still." And it's something that is always lately on my mind, that is like we need, I mean, we are called in when we are mature Christians, that to be, to sanctify, to be, try to be holy in the way that God wants from us to be holy. So we have to meditate day and night through the word of God. And then it's like a long time process. I mean, we are going to be all our life struggling against sin and struggling against the world's temptations. So I think what we need is to, in order to gain the paradise, or to gain the grace of God, or to entry into the kingdom of God, that we need to have faith in God, and to read our Bibles, and keep together, congregating, and and praying. This is what I want to share with you.
Yes, thank you. To read our Holy Scriptures, yes. Would anyone want to also maybe shortly share something from the group discussion?
Yes.
Yavi?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today. It's pretty cool to see everyone. We had a small group discussion here with Vicky and Florian, and we discussed question number 2, how to avoid unwanted influences. So I think we discussed it about, first of all, what is a positive influence? It is something that pushes you, encourages you to go beyond yourself and to improve and to also help other people. And the negative influence is always some kind of people that try to push you down, to bring you down, to make you feel like everything is bad and you should give up. So always when you're listening to other people, if you feel like they're trying to put you down, then that is a negative influence, and you should avoid that and not relate with this kind of people, because it will not be healthy for you. So you should always try to find people who push you forward and tell you that you can even do better and improve you, or want to help you to become a better person, and that is a positive influence. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you. And now I'm not sure if we still have time for one more person. No, Vicky?
Can I say something?
Oh, okay, yes, I did. Edit, maybe quickly. Yes.
Concerning the aspect of the third question, because we are talking of the God wanted human being to enjoy this holy, to make greater the sexual love as a holy bond. And that is what man also did, that give God's pain, that become a source of pain to God. And if we are looking also, we can see it, that is the heart of the parents. When you start to be a parent, because it is like the design that parent has for their children. This is the desire that their children can grow up in a good environment where they can protect and nourish this that desire. And then whenever they are able to meet the person that they are compatible, and then they can share it, and it become a source of goodness, a source of joy also to God. So these are the things. But when these are not met, then it becomes a source of suffering for God himself, and also become a source of suffering for the parents. That is also what we should look into, that as children, not the thing that the parents say, okay, you should not do it this way. It doesn't mean that you are not going to do it, but you have to exercise that patience until the time comes, so that you can enjoy it in a way that can bring joy to your parent and to your God, and to goodness itself. That is how I look at it.
Yes, thank you, Edith. Thank you for sharing. Okay, now I think we need to shortly close. So we will have a homework now for this afternoon to share. Some announcements. So the homework is: reflect what brings you further away from your true self and God. And what can you do to overcome your fallen nature or bad habits and grow? So you can write 3 steps to how to also become a better person. So yes, that's the homework for this afternoon. And I think, yes, that's it for today. See you this evening at 7 to see and understand how God has been trying to restore this relationship that's been lost, and how we can also get back to God. So yes, it's going to be at 7 p.m. Central European time. So see you all tonight. Have a good afternoon, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Thank you very much.
See you tonight.